Sarge and friends, the story so far. After spending a few years on the hit reality show Captain Shame, Sergeant Bastard finally returned to the country to move to the small town of Americatown, USA. He brought Pedro Rodriguez, his co-star of the show, to live with him, because Pedro saved his life, and despite the fact that Sergeant Bastard can't stand foreigners, he decided he would make an exception for the man who saved his life. Unbeknownst to Sergeant Bastard, the Pedro he lives with now is not the Pedro who indeed saved his life, but an imposter who killed the real Pedro while he was out at the bus stop on his way home from doing some errands. This current Pedro is fated to be the Emperor in a future dystopian timeline, hence why the duo of Injun Jack and Beppe LaQuife were sent back in time to defeat Pedro before he could take over the world. They were in fact no match for Pedro, but we just kinda let that go. Or did we? Shortly after, it was also discovered that Pedro was an evil abomination known as the Pedro Fiend. Could this be perhaps how he took over the world in the future timeline? Hard to say, cause Sergeant Bastard, with the combined efforts of Helmano Fuck You, defeated the Pedro Fiend. But there's always the looming chance that the Pedro Fiend could come again. Will that happen? Who's to say? Sharing his house with Pedro, Sergeant Bastard is also joined by the ghost of Officer Savage, a complete and total pussy who Sergeant Bastard mercilessly killed back during the events of Captain Shame. They're also joined by the ghost of Pedro's sister, who was killed because she tried to take over Christmas. Officer Savage and Pedro's sister have both vowed revenge for their deaths, and plan to defeat Sergeant Bastard and Pedro once and for all. Will they actually get their revenge? Who's to say? Among the town, there are plenty of other residents, for instance the Takeshi Army, run by Takeshi himself. Takeshi was originally an enemy to Sergeant Bastard and Pedro, but later befriended them after he was betrayed by one of his own men who turned out set up the whole thing. Among Takeshi's ranks is the ruthless mercenary Gary Gatt, who is the Mafia's #1 hitman. Gary Gatt has sworn revenge against Don Ravioli, the man who killed his family. Will Gary Gatt get his revenge? Who's to say? Plenty of other little misadventures here and there have happened. Something tells me there's going to be a much bigger plot this season. Will these questions I have phrased be answered? Will the world end? Will Sergeant Bastard and Pedro finally tie the knot and get married? Probably not on that last one, but to the rest of these questions, tune in to find out here on Season 3 of Sarge and Friends. Rated R.